Hello and welcome back. I'm glad you're here. If you're a Scorpio, someone with deep emotional insight, strong intuition, and a natural capacity for transformation, then this moment carries particular significance for you. March 29th, 2025 marks a powerful astrological event, a total solar eclipse aligned with a new moon in Aries. From an astrological perspective, this isn't just the beginning of something new, it's a profound ignition point. A personal reset that calls you to rise from within. In this video, we'll explore how this energy uniquely influences Scorpio and how you can move through it with awareness, purpose, and emotional clarity. In astrology, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, bold, action-oriented, and associated with an instinctive fire that initiates and propels forward. When both a total solar eclipse and a new moon take place in Aries, this fiery energy becomes particularly intensified. For Scorpio, this alignment doesn't light up the more visible areas of your life like public image or relationships. Instead, it touches something more private and foundational, your health, your daily routines, and the way you manage your energy on a day-to-day basis. This is a quiet but significant invitation from the universe to pause and examine where your energy is actually going. Are there areas of your life that consistently drain you but offer little in return? Is there something you're doing each day that feels more depleting than nourishing? Perhaps it's a job that no longer aligns with who you are, habits that feel automatic but not supportive, or responsibilities you've been carrying out of obligation rather than choice. Often we maintain certain routines simply because they're familiar, not because they still serve us. But for Scorpio, who is deeply capable of transformation, this moment is an opportunity to reassess your internal systems, how you work, how you rest, how you care for your body and mind, and how your time is structured. The small shifts you choose to make now will set the tone for a completely new cycle ahead. In the next part, we'll explore the inner forces being activated for you so that the changes you make aren't just practical adjustments, but reflections of a deeper clarity about what you truly need in order to sustain your energy and well-being over time. There are moments in life when change doesn't come from the outside. It arises from a quiet but profound exhaustion deep within. As a Scorpio, this solar eclipse and new moon may not manifest as a dramatic external event, but as an internal reckoning. A growing sense that something in your life no longer fits. It might be a behavior you've repeated for years that slowly drains your energy. It could be a subtle but persistent dynamic in a relationship that leaves you guarded, anxious, or emotionally overextended. Or perhaps it's a mindset, a deep-rooted need to stay in control, to anticipate every outcome, to protect yourself at all costs. You're someone who feels things intensely, who often senses emotional undercurrents long before they reach the surface. But that same depth can also keep you in patterns longer than necessary. You may tolerate discomfort because it's familiar, or hold on to people or routines because they once served a purpose. And yet, this eclipse offers you a chance to release, not in defeat, but in wisdom, to acknowledge that something you've outgrown no longer needs to be carried forward. This is not about walking away in bitterness or shutting down. It's about recognizing what no longer supports your evolution and gently letting it go. You don't need to have all the answers right now. You don't need a detailed plan. What's being asked of you isn't control, it's choice. And today, that choice might be as simple as saying, I don't need to keep pushing just to survive. I choose freedom. Freedom in this context doesn't necessarily mean breaking ties or making sudden changes. It may look like loosening your grip, like no longer rehearsing every conversation in your head, like allowing yourself to rest without guilt, like choosing not to fix someone else's chaos. It's the decision to stop living from a place of constant defense and quiet internal tension. When you make that choice, you create space, emotional space, mental space, spiritual space. And from that space, something new begins to take form, not as a reaction, but as a true beginning. In the next section, we'll explore what that space might look like for you and how to work with it intentionally so that what emerges next isn't just different, but aligned with who you're becoming. As a Scorpio, transformation is not foreign to you. In fact, it's a defining part of who you are. You understand more than most that real growth often involves letting go, shedding layers, and stepping into the unknown. You've likely lived through moments of deep personal evolution, times when life changed you from the inside out. And often those shifts have come through crisis, loss, or emotional intensity. It's understandable then that a part of you may have come to associate transformation with pain, with struggle, or with having to hit a breaking point before something new can begin. But this eclipse challenges that belief. It offers a different kind of passage, a quieter, more intentional path forward. This is not the kind of transformation that throws your world into chaos or demands that you rebuild from the ashes. It's not about falling apart. It's about stepping aside from patterns that are no longer necessary. It's about recognizing that your next chapter doesn't require destruction. It only asks for clarity. This solar eclipse in Aries doesn't push you deeper into the dark. On the contrary, it opens a pathway through the dark, an invitation to move forward, not because you've been forced to, but because you are ready. It's the difference between being driven by survival and being moved by choice, between reacting to life and co-creating it. And here's something important to remember. The capacity for transformation doesn't always need to come with emotional upheaval. There is strength in quiet decisions. There is power in calm clarity. You don't need to wait for something to fall apart in order to give yourself permission to change. This moment asks you to reclaim that permission now, not because everything is urgent or breaking down, but because you've matured enough to know when something has run its course. And with that knowing comes the ability to move forward with steadiness, not because you've been pushed, but because you've outgrown what was. In the next part, we'll look at how this grounded transformation can take shape in your daily life, how to shift not through extremes, but through steady choices that realign you with your own inner light. There's a common misconception that change has to be sweeping in order to be meaningful, that in order to transform your life, you must overhaul everything at once, tear it all down and start from scratch. But as a Scorpio, you already understand the value of depth over drama. And right now, during this eclipse, the invitation is not to do more or push harder. It's to start smaller, but with more clarity and precision. This is not a time for grand plans that remain stuck in your mind. It's a time for movement, for one small, deliberate action that signals to yourself and to life, I'm ready for something different. At this stage, it's not about having the entire map. It's about making one aligned decision that shifts your energy, that first action. Whatever it is, doesn't have to be loud. It might be as quiet as removing a task from your to-do list that you no longer have the bandwidth for. It might be deciding to stop chasing a certain approval that you've been conditioned to believe you need. It might even be as personal as taking 10 minutes each evening to check in with how you actually feel, rather than running through the motions of the day. And what you'll find is that this small action is not isolated. Once you take it, it generates movement. It loosens something that felt stuck. Energy that was tangled begins to unravel. You start to see possibilities where before there was only fatigue. You begin to reclaim time and space that had been slowly slipping away to habits, people, or thoughts that no longer serve who you're becoming. There's power in deciding that you no longer need to wait for the perfect moment. That waiting to feel 100% ready or confident has only kept you circling the same terrain. There's power in acknowledging that you may still feel unsure or even a little afraid and acting anyway, because something inside you knows it's time. And boundaries, especially for someone as emotionally perceptive as you, are not about rejection or punishment. They are about conservation, protecting your time, your energy, your mental clarity. If someone or something has repeatedly drawn more from you than they return, then drawing a line isn't selfish. It's self-respect. That line can be internal or external. It might mean distancing yourself emotionally, even when physical distance isn't possible. It might mean saying no more often without apology, or even more simply, it might mean giving yourself permission to disengage from dynamics that always leave you feeling smaller than you are. This is the kind of strength that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't shout. It just moves quietly, but with impact. And with each step you take in this direction, you build momentum. The change you seek doesn't come from force. It comes from repetition, from intention, from being willing to choose something different again and again, even when it feels unfamiliar. In the next section, we'll continue to explore how to maintain this momentum, not by forcing constant progress, but by learning how to listen more deeply to yourself and creating structures that support the life you're quietly stepping into. A life that isn't just more functional, but more aligned with your inner truth. The key to sustaining real change, especially the kind of quiet internal transformation you're being called into now, is not intensity, it's consistency. As a Scorpio, you're naturally drawn to depth and extremes. When you commit to something, you commit fully. But the challenge, especially under this current eclipse energy, is learning how to work with steadiness rather than urgency. How to create space for growth without slipping back into old patterns of all or nothing thinking. Sustainable change comes from structure, not rigid control, but conscious containment. A rhythm that honors your energy rather than depletes it. After the first decision is made, the boundary drawn, the habit shifted, what comes next is the practice of returning to yourself, of noticing when you're slipping into old modes of effort or self-neglect, of gently guiding yourself back again and again without judgment. And this return to yourself doesn't require more effort. It often requires less noise, less distraction, less pushing. What it does ask for is presence. The ability to pause long enough to ask, is this truly how I want to spend my energy today? Does this thought, this obligation, this interaction bring me closer to the life I want or further from it? Small, honest questions like these can act as anchors. They help you hold your center in a world that constantly pulls you outward. They create moments of clarity in the middle of your routines where old behaviors might try to slip back in under the radar. This is also where rituals, however simple, can support you. You don't need elaborate systems. You need something reliable. A short walk at the same time each day, a written reflection before bed, a cup of tea where you sit in silence, even if only for 5 minutes. These small acts signal to your nervous system that you are no longer living in survival mode, that you are safe enough now to slow down, to feel, to choose. And over time, this creates a different kind of strength, one that doesn't burn out, one that isn't reactive but rooted. When you're no longer moving from fear or habit, you begin to move from alignment. And in that space, decisions become clearer, relationships become more honest, the noise fades just enough for your deeper knowing to be heard again. As this eclipse opens a new cycle, it's not demanding that you change everything. It's simply offering you a threshold, a point where you can decide not once, but repeatedly, I'm ready to live differently. Not because you have to, but because you can. In the final section, we'll reflect on how this new phase is not just about leaving behind the old, but about preparing for what's next. A chapter shaped not by reaction, but by your renewed relationship with choice, clarity, and inner authority. This new chapter unfolding for you, Scorpio, is not one that arrives with dramatic fanfare. It comes quietly through a series of choices that, over time, become a way of living. And perhaps for the first time in a while, you are not being asked to prove yourself, to endure more, to push through another emotional fire. Instead, you are being asked to trust that the work you've already done, the inner work, the lessons learned, the cycles you've already closed, is enough to carry you forward. This final part of your eclipse journey is not about looking back. It's about learning how to live from what you've integrated, not in spite of what you've survived. There is a significant difference between those two orientations. Living in reaction to the past keeps you tethered to it. But living from the wisdom of your past allows you to move forward with grounded authority and emotional maturity. You've been through enough to know what drains you. You've seen what happens when you ignore your body's signals, your inner boundaries, your intuitive voice. And this is the moment when all of that accumulated awareness starts to function not just as insight, but as guidance. You begin to lead yourself not from fear of repeating the past, but from a deeper clarity about what you will and will not allow into your future. The solar eclipse in Aries may stir the desire to act, to initiate, to begin anew. But your strength now lies not in how quickly you move, but in how deliberately you choose. What you say yes to, what you no longer tolerate, what you design your days around. These are the subtle, powerful actions that begin to reshape your reality. Not overnight, but enduringly. As this eclipse season opens a new energetic doorway, remember that you do not need to rush through it. You are not behind. You are not late. The pace at which your life unfolds is not meant to be compared to anyone else's. You are moving through your own timeline, shaped by the soul you are and the life you are building from the inside out. Thank you for spending this time reflecting with me. Whether you take just one insight from this message or return to it in the days ahead, I hope it serves as a companion to your own process of quiet transformation. Trust yourself. You know more than you think. And you are ready, maybe not to do everything, but to take the next true step. That's more than enough.